there, I'm Liberlita,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're talking about chapters 19 and 20 of Wind and Truth. This video will contain spoilers for every Cosmere book and the preview chapters that have already been released. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then click off now. Chapter 19 starts with Szeth and Kaladin making their glorious return. I've missed this plot so much. Szeth is still wearing white despite Dalinar saying that he can wear whatever he wants. And I can't wait for him to start wearing different colored clothes, and I'm guessing that at some point Szeth will refuse to change his clothing, but it becomes too impractical. Maybe gets ruined or dirty, or he just becomes too noticeable with wearing all white. And the idea of having preferences for small things like that just shakes him to his core, which is really sad.
He's just devastated at the possibility of having a personality, which same.
Yeah, I too struggle to pick out what I'm gonna wear in the morning. The only preferences that Szeth has is for flying, and it's always been that way since before he was dubbed Truthless. In his mind, he calls Kaladin Son Lyran, which is really cute.
It is super cute. I love all cultures, like real ones, but I especially love little fictional cultures with their little quirks. So cute.
Yeah, it just makes it feel so real. But if someone called Adolin Son Dalinar, he'd throttle them. But we'll get into that drama in the next chapter.
Yeah, in a place where we won't hear that right now.
No, he's not. They arrive at Shinovar, avoiding the northern border due to how hostile the Shin have been to anyone who came near them. Szeth trembles at the sight of the pass and lowers to see a glimpse of Shinovar's nature. Dirt breaking stone, mud and sediment. Despite himself, Szeth cries out as he cancels his lashing and drops to his knees before dandelions. Meanwhile, Kaladin is confused. Cal asks if there's something wrong with the plants and if this is the sign of the problems in Shinovar. God, I'm gonna love this plot. I love fish out of water stories, and especially when said fish is experiencing what we find normal. I find it so funny.
I am getting really emo about stuff getting emo at seeing home and grass for the first time in over a decade. I don't know if I'm gonna get through this plot.
No, I know, right? It's so sweet and sad. Let the man enjoy his grass, damn it.
I can't imagine being banished to a totally alien world where everything, like the plants, the ground, weather, all the beliefs, are all completely foreign to you.
Yeah. Seth Spren, who, until he gets a proper name, it will only be referred to as Party Pooper. His Spren says that these emotions are unfitting for his station and he should not spoil his dignity with base sentimentality. He serves the law. Let him enjoy his dirt and weeds, Party Pooper.
He deserves to have feelings.
The law has no feelings. Unfortunately, Szeth listens to Party Pooper and stands up. He really needs a new Spren. Go bond auxiliary while Sixel still has his honor Spren. Though I won't completely rule out that Party Pooper is actually auxiliary, but needs to go through some character development.
Ugh. I keep seeing this theory and I don't like it at all.
I don't know if it's gonna happen, but it's just such an obvious connection, so that's why everyone thinks it. But maybe Party Pooper sucks too much to be Aux, even without the character development.
It just feels really convoluted.
Yeah. Kaladin asks if Szeth is alright due to his outburst, and Nightblood jumps in, assuring Kaladin that he's perfectly fine. He's a little bit offended that nobody has paid attention to him that day, but he's a patient person. Kaladin rudely ignores Nightblood. Really, no one here deserves Nightblood. This explains that his Spren is mean and he must obey. Even though he's no longer truthless, he still did what his chosen masters required of him. His masters being his High Spren and Dalinar. Kaladin and Syl examine the dandelions. Szeth is standing there being bombarded by the voices in his head, while Cal pokes at the plant with his toe.
He's so suspicious of these weird plants. That's great.
Cal had known about the strange plants in Shinovar, but wonders how they didn't get eaten. Syl suggests that maybe they taste really bad. Syl also suggests that Shinovar was soul-casted. Once it was full of real plants, but someone made it into this, which is technically true since honor and possibly cultivation created Shinovar to allow humans to live on Roshar. Cal feigns crushing the dandelion to see if it would move, but stops just short. Szeth chooses absolute violence and says no wonder Kaladin broke and gave up the spear to abandon his friends. He can't even crush a wheat. He has become a coward. Them's fighting words.
This whole thing has very strong "you used to be cool" energy and reminds me actually a lot of some criticisms I've seen levied at Kaladin since Rhythm of War.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. That's really great. Kaladin warns him he shouldn't say such things. Zeth asks if he should not speak the truth, or is Cal saying that Zeth doesn't have the authority to do so? This isn't what Cal is trying to say, so that Zeth tells him that he should stop talking because if he can't explain what he means, then why voice such silly thoughts? Such drama between these two. Zeth reminds himself that he knows that Kaladin deserves at least some of his reputation, since how Words of Radiance ended.
Yeah, he has personally faced off against him, so I'm sure the juxtaposition between that and how Kaladin is now is kind of weird for him.
It's so funny that Kaladin has to befriend and give therapy to the guy he killed. I bet that scene when they speak to each other about Radiance returning in words will have such a different feel to it after this book.
I'm gonna recontextualize everything. I so want them to be best friends.
They'll be the best of friends. I hope Zeth lives through this book and we get to see their friendship in Arc 2. I assume Kaladin is going to live because I still haven't seen any convincing foreshadowing that he's going to die this book.
Just the opposite, in fact. And, Zeth yearns for death, so I don't think we're gonna give that to him.
God, I can already tell Zeth's character arc is going to emotionally destroy me, and I will probably cry tears of joy when he finally becomes at peace, or at least can move on from what he's done and allow himself to be a person again. God, I've missed these chapters so much. Syl tries to distract Kaladin by saying that the plants are neat. Kaladin agrees that they'll have to get used to them. He suggests that the quote-unquote normal plants are just hiding amongst Shinovar. I wonder if this is some kind of foreshadowing that something is hiding in Shinovar. I know that Unmade is there, but I wonder if there's something else. It could be a reference to the wind, or maybe something else is hiding there. Seth is confused at the suggestion that the normal plants are hiding. Cal asks if the plants can't hide because they don't move, and questions how they can survive like this. Of course, the storms weren't strong in Shinovar, but there were still people and animals. But the plants are more resilient than Kaladin realizes. Kaladin still thinks they'll get trampled on in there, like a lone soldier in the company with no armor.
I love seeing what's normal for Kaladin and what's normal for Seth coming to a head here. Bonding.
Also, Kaladin's reactions are so wholesome. We got a little bit of this in the last book with the dog and the dragon, but him just finding the beauty in Shinovar is really endearing. It's a different side of Kaladin that we don't really see all that often.
I'm just picturing him hovering just above the ground, like Peter Pan style. Very untrusting of the ground beneath his feet because it's so weird to him, but also like really intrigued.
Eee. Then at the end of this chapter, he looks so excited to explore Shinovar. People always get excited about Shallan or Yasna becoming world hoppers, but can you imagine him, and Syl, if we're dreaming big here, exploring the Cosmere, seeing how alien the world he finds to be normal is to a lot of people out in the universe, but then seeing even stranger worlds like Lumar, Komashi, and Canticle. I don't think it would happen, but I just love this side of Cal.
It's almost whimsical and definitely not a side of him we get to see very often. I'm really loving it.
Zeth contains his amusement because party pooper wouldn't be happy to see such emotion. Instead, he joins Kaladin flying along the pass. Soon they see it. Grass, vines. Zeth explains that in Shinovar, these are normal plants. There are none of those that he's accustomed to. Kaladin draws an awe-spren at the sight and the realization that there are no real plants. He's so excited. Zeth follows Kaladin, but definitely not because he's excited, just because he has to be there. They are definitely not bonding and will definitely not have a long-lasting friendship. We then go to chapter 20 and all the drama. We return with Navani and the aftermath of discovering that Odium has a new vessel. The sibling says that if someone new holds Odium, then Race is dead. The Stormfather looks into it and confirms that Race is no longer Odium. The tone had changed, but it was subtle. Unfortunately, the Stormfather cannot identify the new vessel. The Stormfather is regretful that he wasn't the one who was able to strike Race down. As he leaves, the sibling misses how he once was, less angry all the time.
We're really moving on from the whole new odium thing like too quickly. Like obviously that's bad and they don't have a way to find out who it is. They think Garavangian is dead. Don't really have a way to put two and two together, but
I wonder if it would be worth trying to figure out who it was. Yes, it would be extremely difficult because it could literally be anyone on Roshar. However, Hoyt would have known that there would be a random corpse laying around somewhere, and they have a rough idea of when Odium was raised and when he was not.
They probably assume that it wouldn't be helpful if they know the new host, but they do know who. They don't know who it is, but they do know Taravangian. They know quite a bit about how he works, actually, so that would be very helpful.
Yeah, this could just be because we know who it is and how helpful it would be to figure it out, and it's possible for them to figure out. Fen asks who cares because he's still trying to kill us. Hoyt explains that he knew race and Rhodium was deep in his position of godhood that made him predictable. The new Odium will take more risks.
He's considering saying screw it to the whole thing, regardless of what it'll do to him. That's very dangerous.
They'll have to keep the contest of champions, but lesser promises like exploiting loopholes will not hold up. Fen suggests that they call off the contest, but that is a definite no-go, because that will mean that Odium can retaliate in person without facing retribution from other gods, meaning he'll yeet Roshar into the sun. Message received loud and clear. Navani tries to suggest that they change the capitals, but Hoyt has already thought of it and it's still a no-go. Being the absolute queen that Navani is, she goes, "All right then, we're going back to where we started, merely with a better understanding." Now it's time to plan what's next. Stargirl brings up the Google maps of Roshar, and the sibling is surprised by the new development. The sibling asks how they were able the sibling asks how were they able to do things that the ancient Radiants could not. Navani explains, quote, "Science is usually the product of incremental advances shared across a body of people working together. But sometimes that group limits you, because they make assumptions. I know there are many things that we lost from the ancient Radiants that they did better, but at the same time, we're not limited by their expectations." I love Navani so much, and if Brandon harms one hair on her head, I will riot. Alright, so now on to the logistics of this war. I actually made a graphic that lays out basically everything that's said in this chapter to help keep track of what's going on. I'll have it up on screen, but if you would like to see it more closely or download it to have it, then the link will be in the description. First, let's establish what extra support the coalition can send. First, the coalition's larger forces from Emul. There is 40,000 of them, and they are a 6-day march from Azimir. Urithiru has 20,000 reserves of and off-duty soldiers. Unfortunately, many of the Urithiru reserves were slaughtered during the last book's invasion. They also don't have many troops that can reach the Oathgate in time. They're already stretched very thin, and they can't move large bodies of troops with how few wind runners they have. They now need to figure out how to allocate their resources between Azimir, Thaylenah, and the Shattered Plains.
As for the enemy forces, the Mink lays out that the fleet sailing for Thaylenah has over 200 ships, but they're not really made for naval combat. Instead, they are transporting 40,000 soldiers to Thaylen City. Thaylenah will also have skybreakers, but not very many fused. The force moving to Azimir is small, 15,000, and barely a handful of fused. The army going to the Shattered Plains is exclusively fused, 1,000 and at least 2 Thunderclaps.
Let's talk about what's going on with Azimir. In regards to the 40,000 coalition troops coming to Azimir, Gox is worried that the 6 days will be too long for the city to hold out. In Azimir, they only have 3,000 city defenders, whereas the army from Shadesmar will have 15,000. They are likely to arrive in the middle of day 3. The 40,000 are likely to win once they arrive, however, they will still get there on day 7 or 8. There is a possibility that if Azimir is taken during the week, the 40,000 reinforces might be able to take the city back. Also, Azir is an empire in name only and is actually a complex imperial state, but it still means that if Azimir falls, then the small kingdoms will do so as well.
The enemy will also have very few invested troops. The average Slinger troop is stronger than a human one due to warform armor. However, the Shadesmar troops must go through the Oathgate, which will not be open for either side, effectively locking them both in Azir. The Oath Gate is also surrounded by a metal dome, and that could work as an excellent force multiplier. Azir will be hard to hold because the city will be flooded with enemies from the Oath Gate at the center of the city, yards away from the palace.
As for Thaylenah, it's struggling significantly. They only have a skeleton navy left and very few ground forces. They're heavily dependent on the resources provided by the coalition. Thaylenah is also extremely vital because if they lose that to Odium, then they've lost the sea. The enemy will need to perform an ocean assault and break through the city walls, and while they've done it before in the Battle of Thaylen Field, it would be much harder to accomplish this time because they know it's coming.
The Shattered Plains might be able to handle themselves and seem like the most well-off of the three. They can pull outlying forces and centralize at Narek. However, while it is still defended, Dalinar does not like the idea of pitting conventional troops against fused, so they'll need the Radiants the most. If they lose the Shattered Plains, they'll lose their last foothold in eastern Roshar. However, the Shattered Plains' terrain makes it difficult to breach.
The coalition has to do a careful balancing act. They do not want to overcommit with Azir just for them to not be needed when the 40,000 arrive, and then not have enough resources for Thaylenah and the Shattered Plains.
So here's the plan they come up with. Azir will get 2,000 of the 20,000 from Urithiru. Adolin insistently volunteers to be the leader of the troops. He will ask for volunteers who are ready for a difficult fight and recruit the best of them, his own words, including the Cobalt Guard. Adolin's goal is to hold the city until the 40,000 reinforcements arrive rather than risking losing the city and not being able to take it back.
Yasna will lead the bulk of the 20,000 reserves to Thaylen City since she has experience fighting there. She will bring several generals along with her. They will also send stormwards to seal up the wall after the damage from the previous battle. They will also get edge dancers to help with the wounded. So it looks like Liv might be heading to Thaylen City.
Watch her get stuck in Urithiru again, poor girl.
No, let her be free. Though she could be assigned to the Shattered Plains because they'll need Radiance. As for the Shattered Plains, there will be a majority of their Radiance. As for the Shattered Plains, they will get the majority of their Radiance to be able to combat the infested troops. Dalinar wants a Radiant at the lead, so he picks Sixel, who accepts even though he's absolutely shitting his pants right now. Poor guy. Dalinar promises a storm wall to back them up and generals for taxes. They'll need windrunners since they are the largest and most decorated group of Radiant soldiers. And that's what we get in this chapter. Once again, I've laid this out in my graphic, so if you want to check it out, the link is in the description. Navani is asked about the tower's natural defenses, and his sibling assures them that they will not be invaded because the fused will fall unconscious, Regals will have their forms stripped from them, and even common soldiers will lose the access to their rhythms, and the tower's beats can drive them mad. Yeah, my money is the tower getting invaded. This is way too much of. This will absolutely, definitely not happen. Nope, not a never. Not a million years. Oh crap, they're invaded. And I think that after the third time, they'll finally succeed, which is really unfortunate. Gox is very anxious about how long the troops will take to arrive, and when it's suggested that they let the enemy take Azir and try to take it back before the 10 days are up. Adolin vehemently disagrees with this tactic. He walks through the Google map, and Navani catches him relaying what's been said to Maya, which is odd. I don't remember him doing this other than we was speaking to Maya in words before a duel.
So he just fully pulls out a big A shard blade in the middle of a war meeting? Weird.
Very weird. Navani is really chill about it too, and doesn't even ask about it. Aelin questions what would happen if they burned the city, which is possibly a reference to what Dalinar did with the rift.
Yeah, we'll get a lot of those.
Oh, just a few. Adolin is very calm in this chapter and very reasonable.
Definitely not thinking about the rift constantly. Definitely not letting that fester.
Definitely not letting it cloud his judgment. Adolin argues as he steps into the center of Shinovar that they cannot risk Azir being taken, which is an odd thing for Brandon to have him do. This feels like it'll come back later and is going to be some kind of foreshadowing. You'll see soon how much I think that this chapter foreshadows for what's to come, so I can completely believe that this is a reference to something later down the line. When Nora says that if Azir falls, the entire empire falls to Odium, Adolin once again insists that they cannot risk it and volunteers to lead the elite small force into Azir. This includes the Cobalt Guard, which means we'll be getting more of Kalat in Adelin's chapters. Wonder where that'll go.
It really feels like Adeline has something to prove to his father here.
Absolutely. He's very angry. Adolin is frustrated that Dalinar hesitates to let him go, unlike Yasna or Sixel. Also, poor Dalinar and Navani, both their children are going off leading this war, and Renarin is doing something.
Going with Fallon on the bottom Eastern recovery trip, according to the synopsis. Everyone's getting into place.
Dalinar assures him he was just thinking, and Navani can tell he doesn't want to get into it. Adolin asks if he failed him too many times. Gox interrupts, asking if Adolin can lead the forces. He is the most accomplished swordsman in Althkar, perhaps even the entire world. I wonder why Brandon felt the need to mention this. He was trained in warfare by the Blackthorn himself, and Gox is certain his generals would welcome his aid. Trained in warfare by the Blackthorn but doesn't think about ambushes? Also, Brandon, why are you mentioning this?
Wait, hold on. The best swordsman in the world, trained by the Blackthorn himself? That's very odd to mention right now.
Very odd. Navani isn't so certain the generals will welcome Adolin, since she has seen how jealous soldiers can get when someone outside their command structure shows up and takes charge. Sounds like foreshadowing that the generals are not going to appreciate Adolin showing up and taking over.
Hey, remember at the end of Wave Kings when Adeline took exception to Kaladin just coming in and trying to order everyone around, even though he was saving their lives?
I do remember that. Sounds like Adolin's going to get the taste of its own medicine. Adolin continues to argue the point, saying that the Shadesmar force won't have many feuds, and there were only a few heavenly ones, but most of the ships were full of common soldiers. So this means more feuds are going to come then, alright. This chapter is chock full of dramatic irony foreshadowing that Brandon loves. Either a character will say something that will turn out to be true, i.e., Navani saying the soldiers wouldn't be thrilled about Adolin being there, or they'll say something that turns out to be wrong, so your theory definitely won't be attacked. He loves his dramatic irony. Finally, Dalinar relents and allows Adolin to take the 2,000 troops. Gox is over the moon, or moon since this is Rashar. I'm sure nothing bad will happen.
Adeline, if you get Gox killed or hurt, then you are dead to me.
Agreed. Dalinar breaks the meeting for now, but asks for generals to be sent to speak with him and the Mink. They will iron out the smaller details of the strategy. Adolin is about to join the Aegis groups, but stops at the edge of the map. He and Dalinar lock gazes, and Navani internally begs for Dalinar to hug Adolin, to wish him the best, tell Adolin he believes in him. Neither of them speak. Adolin goes off to leave, and Navani sighs.
Oh, Navani, you mean so well, but this really isn't something that can be fixed with a hug and an apology.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Though them actually talking and both trying for a productive conversation would help, and I think Dalinar saying he believes in Adolin would help a smidge.
This really seems like goodbye, too, with them both going their separate ways, so I don't know if that productive conversation will ever happen.
Yeah, it really feels like they'll have very little chances to talk to each other. Adolin will be in Azamir until at the earliest day 8 or 9, and I feel like trying to define honor will take a lot of Dalinar's time between now and the duel.
Oh well.
Dalinar says that his son wants little to do with him these days, and it's for the best to just let him go. Navani argues that it's not what he wants. Adolin needs his father. He can't just let him walk out.
Aw, Navani really thinks they can work it out. She's so hopeful.
Dalinar says they don't have time for this drama, and whatever he does would only make things worse. It's never good enough, and he fears if he asks him for something, he'll do the opposite. He trails off when he realizes Adolin has stopped by the door. Navani's delighted that he's still there, but girly. He heard what Dalinar said. I don't think he'll appreciate it, knowing that his father believes he'll just do the opposite of what he's told. That might even feed into his idea that he failed Dalinar, because he couldn't do what he was told. I know she really doesn't understand the extent of Adolin's anger, because Dalinar breathed in his direction and goes, "What, father? You think I failed at breathing? Remember how you made my mom stop breathing?"
I keep joking about his daddy issues, but oof. He really is carrying around a lot of angst. He's just overheard Dalinar essentially saying that he's a dramatic and disobedient child who refuses to listen. Ouch.
Yeah, that's not helpful. Reluctantly, Adolin relays the message from Shallan, recounting briefly about the Ghost Floods and how Shallan was recruited at the Shatter Plains. Navani is very pissed off at this and wonders why Shallan hadn't come with him with this. Now this makes me very excited to see, because if you remember, in Words of Radiance, Navani completely iced Shallan out when she arrived at the Shatter Plains. Navani was grieving Yasa's death and taking it out on Shallan. She let go of her misplaced anger after Shallan came back from her chasm adventures with Kaladin, but still, this is going to be such great drama when Navani realizes that yes, she thought her daughter had died, but Shallan had also lost someone important to her. Not only had Shallan been very dedicated to becoming Yasna's ward, but Yasna was one of the few people in the world who understood what Shallan was going through as a Radiant. They had that connection, and Shallan didn't know if she would ever find someone to connect to with this ever again, and she lost that. Then she was iced out by Navani and didn't know who she could trust. So, of course, she was driven in the hands of Ghostbloods, who preyed on her fear and lack of support. Yes, she had Adolin, but they just met, and Zabarla was basically forced to take her in. It's gonna be so great for them both to lay out their feelings, and when Navani realizes how scared Shallan is about being rejected by her in-laws, it's gonna be so good. I also wonder if we'll get a callback to Navani's journals, since we know she at least wrote about Words of Radiance events thanks to the epigraphs. Adolin explains that she's moving against the Ghostbloods and needs authorization for an operation and a Radiant strike force. Dalinar does not like the idea of authorizing a strike on a group he barely knows anything about and put someone in charge that apparently has been lying to them. Sheesh. I've seen people upset at, I think, specifically Dalinar for this, and, it is harsh, but he does have a point. Shallan was keeping secrets from her in-laws. This is a group that has tried to assassinate Yasna and is trying to manipulate Alethi politics. Hopefully they'll get to work it out. Hell, if Dalinar is going to be in the spiritual realm to find honor, he might just join Shallan on their Mad Mishram quest.
Yeah, I'm kind of on Dalinar's side on this one. I adore Fallon, but it's a fact that she's been lying to all of these people, to her family, essentially, the entire time that she's known them, and about some pretty significant things that have put herself and many other people in danger.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Shallan was iced out from Navani, and Dalinar isn't the most, welcoming person in the world. However, at a certain point, you should probably tell them. But I also think, based on last week's chapters, Shallan seems very afraid about being rejected by essentially her new parents. It's the reason why she sent Adolin to ask rather than going herself. Adolin throws the lying comment back in Dalinar's face.
Now, this is interesting. Adeline had such an oddly nothing reaction to Shallan telling him everything at the end of Rhythm of War. So this is a lot of anger at Dalinar for essentially the same reason. He's understandably very angry at Dalinar for killing his mother, but he's also exceptionally angry at Dalinar for keeping it from him, for lying to him. He was, what, 14 when it happened?
How long between Evie dying and Gavilar's assassination? Also, during that time, Dalinar was drinking himself away.
I think 4 years, according to the Coppermind, during which time Dalinar was heavily imbibing. And then Dalinar had his memories of all of it magically erased for years, and then he tells his sons via book, once he does remember.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Dalinar getting his memories removed. That's interesting that Adolin is fine about finding out that Shallan has been lying to him basically for the entire relationship, but not this. Also, interesting parallel between Dalinar and Shallan. They're both repressed memories. Huh.
It was a shrug and a "at least you're telling me the truth now" kind of reaction, which it wasn't his POV though, so I wonder if Dalinar wasn't on his mind. He's drawing parallels now for sure. There's actually an older word of Brandon saying that the Adeline, Shallan, Kaladin love triangle was meant to echo another one in the series, and most people will think of the Dalinar, Navani, Gavilar, which probably isn't wrong, but I think there are also strong parallels to Evie, Dalinar, and Navani. That's not super important, but because of it, I've always thought that Shallan and Dalinar have had a lot of interesting parallels and similar coping mechanisms.
I've never heard this WAP before. That's interesting. I never really thought about how similar the two were, but It is something to think about. Also, in regards to Adolin finding out about Shallan lying and seeing it through her POV, I wonder if she missed something in his reaction. Because remember at the beginning of the book when Dalinar is brought up in lasting integrity, and Adolin basically is like, of course Dalinar will want to do this himself, but Storms, he's the best man for the job. Where was that anger then? Maybe Shallan just isn't noticing it.
She could totally just not be noticing it. No one has really noticed it or really worried about it over the last year.
Just like Adolin totally didn't notice how Shallan was clearly avoiding the confrontation between her and her in-laws, it's interesting that Shallan is rarely there to witness this anger. Is he hiding it from her?
I could see that. She has had a great deal of her own to deal with.
Yeah, and she could just be busy and just never around to see it. I wonder what she'll make of this when she does. Navani wants to scream at these two and considers intervening, but they were going to have to work it out eventually. Yep, I'm sure they will. Dalinar says Adolin is supposed to be above jibes like that because he raised him to be better, and anger spren like blood pool at Adolin's feet at the suggestion that Dalinar raised him.
Oh, he used to be so proud to be his son, too. Oof.
There's also an interesting note that anchor spren are one of the few varieties of spren that ignored Navani's orders. Interesting. Adolin says that Dalinar did not raise him and killed the woman who did. Dalinar winces and says that this isn't the time. Navani suggests that it could be, but Adolin refuses and just wants Dalinar to authorize the strike force. Dalinar sighs, but agrees. Navani laments how close they were. She thinks Dalinar is about to say something more, but instead suggests that Adolin might need help with the Azish because he doesn't speak the language. Adolin says he'll just get an interpreter, but Dalinar gives him a bondsmithing to allow him to understand Azish. Adolin leaves. Navani's heart bleeds for them, and she asks why Dalinar doesn't say more. Now is not the time to deal with this drama. And he has a strategy meeting to lead.
We have put off dealing with this with the excuse that there isn't time thrice in this chapter. I really think this might be the only time they have, and not even trying to sort things out is going to backfire for the both of them.
Mm-hmm. In this book, characters have been saying a lot, we'll just deal with this after the war, but I think they're going to realize that not dealing with something now will only come to bite them. Yes, the world is kind of ending and there's major stuff going on, but that doesn't stop everything else going on.
There's a great deal of, oh, we'll deal with this later, and there isn't time, but I think Dalinar will find that this very much was the only time. I think he'll really regret not making it happen, though if it could have made it happen is really a different question.
Oof, yeah. I think we've seen in these few chapters that Aelin might not be able to forgive Dalinar for what he did. So even if Dalinar had tried to solve it, it might have already been too late. Then after the strategy meeting, he needs to speak with Navani, Yasna, Wit, and maybe Fen about his conversation with cultivation. Interesting he's not inviting his sons to this, but okay. And that's the end of the chapters. I am kind of thankful that we only got 2 this week because 20 was a lot of stuff and last week was also a lot. Things are getting moved into place and I believe there's a lot being set up. I'm excited to see where things go from here.
And definitely a lot of setup. We're moving our characters into positions where they'll be for most of the rest of the book, I think, and really getting into it now. Definitely glad for just 2 chapters this week, and what chapters they were. I feel like 20 in particular is one I'll go back to a lot in the future because it feels like there's a ton of foreshadowing in here.
Definitely. I can see so many pieces of information that I bet will come back and play. They might not be exactly how I think they'll go, but I think they'll be used in some way. Just a friendly reminder, the Stormlight archive is not bloated. Don't let Reddit convince you otherwise. But for right now, that's all I have for you. Remember, there's always another secret.